All right, starting recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday book launch with Redheaded Stepchild. I'm Malika Albrecht, and I am the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. If you don't know about us, we only publish poems that have been rejected elsewhere, which, such a hard criteria. I hope you can meet it one day. Tonight we get to celebrate with John Amen. I was really looking forward to this. I still am. And John, I have to go ahead and tell you, I'm obsessed with the poem Apprenticeship. I don't know if you're reading it tonight, but at some point, I'm going to send you something about it. It's a small poem, but it hits me every time.
So
Rexy.
interesting. So interesting. I just worked it in tonight. I thought I'm going to read a couple things I haven't read, and that was one of them.
Well,
Yeah. So
thank you for
thanks,
picking
thanks
up
for
onto
putting
the
the energy out
universal
there. I obviously picked
vibration.
up on it.
I love it because I actually thought that today. I thought, would it be rude to like ask, would you read this? Because
Yeah.
I just would love to hear your voice with it. Oh, I love that. Thank you for that. I'm not surprised though. So I'm going to introduce you to John Amen if you don't already know him. If you don't, you get a treat tonight because you get to meet him, and that's a beautiful thing. John Amen is the author of 6 collections of poetry, including this one, which is out from New York Quarterly, Dark Souvenirs. And we already talked about how Thea is the artist for the cover, which I think is so perfect for the book. And I do want to talk about that collaboration as well. Um, his book, Illusion of Overwhelm, was New York Quarterly Books, was a finalist for the 2018 Brockman-Campbell Award, and work from which was chosen as a finalist for the 2018 Dana Award. He is a recipient of the 2021 Jack Grapes Poetry Prize, and his poems have been translated. Oh, can you get those people in? Hi, Post is here. That's awesome. Thank you. Um, and his poems have been translated into Spanish, French, Hungarian, Korean, and Hebrew. He founded as the managing editor of Pedestal Magazine. If you don't already know about Pedestal, please look it up. Some of the best contemporary poetry is being published there. Not only that, they have a bonus of you get paid for your poem, which I just think is so beautiful. His music, literary, and film reviews appear regularly in various publications. He has studied the Enneagram extensively and is a certified teacher in the Narrative Enneagram professional training program. He lives with his wife, who we are lucky to have here, Thea Powers, and she is an artist. I think we already talked about this, designer and Dharma leader. John, welcome so much to
Thanks so much.
Redheaded Stepchild. I'm trying to find you right now. Where are you? Oh, there you are. I'm going to spotlight
Yeah.
you if you're okay with that.
Okay.
There we go.
Um, yeah, thanks so much, Malika. Thanks so much for having me on here. Great to see everybody. Um, and you showed the book, and I'll just hold it up again. Dark Souvenirs. It was wonderful to collaborate again with Thea on the cover, and of course NYQ New York Quarterly Books is always a pleasure to work with. So I'll jump in and read a few poems from the collection, and I did each reading I try to put in some new poems that I haven't read before, just to kind of keep it mixed up a little bit. I'm gonna set a time or two just so I don't. I'm trying to fit everything in, and I think that if I stick to what I was doing, I should be good. All right, so this is the first poem in the collection called Family Systems. 3 weeks after his bullseye shot, his cell phone kept dialing. Long blank messages. I could almost hear the engine of his breath. He should have been the world's youngest maestro, but spent his years hiding in the valves of a West Side trumpet, blowing sparks, but no music, a part he couldn't conjure once he inhaled. Finally, I answered, waited for the caller to begin his confession. Hope can nail your feet to a burning floor. Grief can smoke the dirt under your shoes. A month after my brother's funeral, spackled sky, red blooms on the gardenia. I could hear my father grinding his teeth from across the room. My mother stared out a window, whispering to herself, deciphering omens in the bird's song. I told you 1,000 times, she blurted, crazy dervish spinning in my direction. Never hang a hat on a black doorknob. Now look, just look what you've done. Um, so really quickly, the book came out of the death of my uncle, but the poems quickly turned into kind of reconfigurations of who he was and what our relationship was. It went in a lot of different directions. And I'll read a couple more that are sort of on this theme. And this is the one that Malika mentioned, apprenticeship. There are about 8 or 9 prose poems in here, and the next 2 pieces are prose poems. So this is apprenticeship. My brother and I memorized our parents' epic, their curses and grunts, mastering that pigeon of volatility. We can feel an earthquake rising in the slightest twitch of an eyebrow. Murder begins with a pinch of the lips. I swear, brood has a particular smell. Fester has a sound, like an orchestra of snipers tuning in the dark. One more prose piece. It's even shorter. I think this is the shortest one in the book. At some point, you flapped for the sun, the sky held its ground. Rubber light and oxy dawns, flash of the barrel, your name powder in the haze. How my own life is divided, the lull before, the lull after. Real quickly, so when my uncle died, um, well, before he died, he had been in a relationship that lasted didn't last particularly long, but after he died, the person that he was involved with called me quite a bit, and it was odd because I was never around, and she left these long messages, basically trying to work out all the feelings she had around it in these long messages. So there were like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 2-minute messages. And I mean, so, and I would call back and I would never reach her. And then she'd call back and leave another. And it was just an interesting saga. So I had a couple poems that sort of came out of that. This is a little bit longer piece called Conjugal. If you haven't figured it out yet, this is a portrait of the man you married, who hovered above his own body, clutching his invisible horn. After words and blurbs and the ash house, you found his favorite fanfares under the couch cushion, the living room carpet. You swept them up, boiled them, pinned them to a corkboard for safekeeping. Next day, you heard mad wings fluttering on the other side of the house. Is that you? You said, tossing the sheets, bolting toward that power flash. And he staggered as if at the end of a hallway, dashing notes on your backsplash, unspooling his crescendo as the sun rose. You married an invisible man with an invisible horn. You waited for him to find his body, find his music. You doused him with arias. You danced in your gown beside a window as he floated in the rafters. Slapping his invisible horn, he buckled on his bad leg, tangled, stranded in that hallway, lost between jilted rooms. He was strung by his father, tuned by his mother. He won a contest when he was a boy. It shoved him into cold chairs, a measure he never found his way out of. His horn fell asleep in its case. He slapped it and slapped it. It never woke. He was a boy, the wrong people whispering in his ear, a boy who heard the music calling. It sounded like a stranger being abducted in a van. The scream growing fainter until the van was gone. The scream was gone. He played his winning refrain on his invisible horn for his imaginary fans, while his cravings dilated in a minor key. He blew and blew into his invisible horn, asking you to carry the music he couldn't wait, to applaud him, lost in a hallway. You said you could feel him clanging between molecules. You could hear him more glaringly than when he stammered barefoot through the kitchen, dragging his solo behind him. He was married to you, but he borrowed his timbre from another muse, leashed himself across the floor, that shuffle by the hutch and the liquor bin. He fiddled with knobs on the stove, sorrow reeking of poppies and garlic, hurled steak knives and a grater into the microwave. He smashed a vase, stamped a riff on the tan carpet, an inky coda on the kitchen wall. One neighbor said, "It sounded like a snare drum." Another neighbor said, "It sounded like a muffled bell." He was married to you. He stood in a hallway, hands wrapped in gauze. He played an invisible horn as bull-headed light crashed through an open window. Your phone kept ringing no matter how many times you answered it. The great fires began to burn. Wow, there are a lot of comments in the chat. I have to take a look at that, I guess. Not now though, right? Maybe I can save them or
I'm
something like
gonna send it to you,
that.
John. I should have probably
Oh,
told
okay.
you copy. I'll make sure you get a copy because you're gonna want to read this at your leisure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, wow, look at that. I'm 40. I mean, that's a lot of, that's great.
They're amazing poems.
No, thank you. Wow. This is the second one that sort of came out of the conversation or the messages, I guess you could say, the exchange with Karen. This is called No Longer July. Oh, and there's a couple things here. So I mentioned a K-pop, which is a genre of pop music, Korean pop. And then I say Stefan's poem, and it's Stefan Levasic's poem. He's a Vietnam vet whose poetry deals a lot with war, but other things obviously as well too. No Longer July. Sometimes it jumbles, beats from a K-pop project, Stefan's poem about the coordinates of war. Detective Ana Garcia's voicemail splits the airwaves, how she unscrewed the door from its hinges, boring her flashlight into a curtained room. Richard slumped in his chair, a scarecrow with a postcard lacquered to his chest. Now I rescan the email from his ex, insisting that she loved him despite the way their short summer ended. Regardless of who loved who or didn't, it's been a year since I swore off arguing with the dead. The things we carry, how it's never enough to stand shirtless in a field singing the truth. You need someone across the fence to applaud, to say, yes, you were there when the gun went off, though you weren't. Yeah, you reached for the barrel at the last moment, though you were 500 miles away, rummaging through bills or changing a light bulb or trying to get to the bottom of why your newspaper wasn't delivered. I wish I could tell her that if she weeps long enough, he'll return, floating above her king-sized bed at 3 a.m., mouthing, "All is forgiven, baby." But even he can't chase away that reek of sulfur. It's all yours. It hovers, thick as guilt or longing or resentment, until you don't need it anymore. You roar in the middle of the night. It's gone. Um, you may remember the drummer for the Foo Fighters overdosed in South America, and I remember it brought up memories of different musician friends I had and times when I played music. And as I mentioned, the this collection kind of reimagines Richard in a way in a lot of different roles. So this in this poem he's a different, again set in uh a different space. And it's also interesting, I will just add, this is probably more information that I need to mention, but he actually was not particularly musical, but for some reason I've attributed him these musical leanings. Um, but so this is called The Music at Hand. I saw the news about the famous drummer found pulseless in his hotel room in Bogota. The boulevard outside Casa Medina lined with sunflowers, fans singing through the night. Truth is, I didn't know much about him, and I flashed on my old friend Richard, how he used to chop lines of speed in his garage. Richard pounding those flea market Ludwigs as I banged on my knockoff Gibson, slobbering into a Radio Shack microphone. We scored one gig, opening for his brother's girlfriend, 15 minutes under a purple disco ball. Richard was fast, slow, no one cared, least of all me, floating in feedback, kicking bottles off the stage. Years later, I spent a month whispering to myself in a basement before nurses doused my skull with current, lightning sloshed in my brain, so many pages devoured. I ascended, stumbling back to the bright platform of the living, that synaptic chorus dredged from a muddy tomb. Now I pause, listening to the famous drummer drum, a playlist that unfurls like a long memento mori, an extended adagio clipped into FM flares. I try to recall Richard's face, his sarcasm. Their verses I can't quite conjure, refrains that elude me. His brother called in 2012. It was late March then, too. The suburban yard shimmered with daffodils, lavender blooms. Richard had died from an overdose, found by neighbors face down on a shag carpet, his dog barking over his corpse. So many dead by needle, pills, in fiery wrecks, souls who refused to succumb to the tempo life demanded, drummers who flogged the beat until no one could find it, or lagged until the song fell apart. Today, my city's young again with the rhythms of spring, but I'm spelled by ghosts. They huddle in the shadows, voices slurring on repeat, as if begging to be heard. And I hear them, at least for a few measures, before I turn away, shoving myself sunward, back to the music at hand. All right, I think I'm on track here. I'm gonna read two more. This one's called Romana Clef. Summer days, my dad was drunk by dusk, firing his 12 gauge at the grackles, those rimy-eyed phantoms whistling in the hemlock. Later, Ma would send me into the blackness to find him, lost in Crawford's orchard, mumbling to himself in the dirt. I was 16 when Suzanne, the beekeeper, peeled off her spacesuit on the broad bank of the Packlet, a 9mm tattooed on her right breast, a Bible on her left. I spent July and August worshiping the pistol and the good book. Came to on a slippery rock, gun-shy and devil-bruised, when she left for Murphy in September. I picture my parents as the shadows I knew when we lived in that rickety house. Creaky bones, colander roof, staircase moaning like an out-of-tune cello. Dad, who died sober a decade ago, pacing in the woods. Ma, whose memory dried like a creek bed, floating through a blue room with a vacation smile. Some nights I ride those wings back to the river and the evergreens. Suzanne towering in the wet grass, hands slapping at the moon. My body flares with the din of the grackles, their manic jazz, one savage horn rising over the rest. In dream after dream, it's the music I always wanted. And before I wake, starlight spills over me, over everything. And I'll close. Thanks again for inviting me, Malika, and thanks everybody for listening to these poems. I appreciate it. Um, if you're interested, I can put a couple links in the chat if you're interested in the book. Um, so this is the last piece in the collection called Impermanence, and it is dedicated to Thea. Well, I guess it's still on here. I can't tell. Um, and it kind of it closes the whole Richard saga. Impermanence for Thea. Richie finally gets his 69 Corvette, cruises uptown Bardo with big cash, shredding solos for his mentor, treating the cheerleaders to hot dogs and beer. I text the ferryman and convince him to skip our port, lassoing the goodbye sun. Richie idles on a boomerang curve, honking for me to join him. Those last days of summer, that teenage Gethsemane, frayed my wiring. These decades later, I flicker in doorways, at thresholds, battlegrounds where the sidewalk ends and the rest of your life begins. Richie goads his Corvette, plows that diamond ramp, launching into the twilight. Of course, the ferry arrives. You lean over the balcony, tangled in rainbow vines, waving to me. A terrible wind blows, and I page back to the rough water. When the anchor drops, I want to run for the bluff, steal another day, another shimmering chorus. But my feet are frozen, and night crashes on the shore. Thank you. Thanks again.
Oh, John, thank you. Everybody, y'all can unmute because I know we all have the same response here to take a moment and oh, powerful poems. Thank you very
Woo!
much.
Thanks
Amazing.
so much. Appreciate it.
Woo!
Thank you. Yeah. Wow, I do want to see those comments. I'm curious. That's
Oh,
great.
yeah, you're gonna have, I'll refer back to some of them just because some lines, four of us at the same time would put out there. So I think you'll really enjoy when I send it to you, looking back and seeing like that synchronicity of power, of energy. Do
Mm.
people have questions before I start, asking some?
Yeah,
Okay, 'cause
John, tell us a little bit about your uncle. Is it your mom's or your dad's brother?
Uh, I'm sorry. Richard was my mother's brother. Yeah. And yeah, he was in his 80s when he died.
This isn't your first book with New York Quarterly, is it?
third,
No, actually, this is my third, and if you include a collaboration I did with Daniel Y. Harris, it's the
Oh,
fourth.
okay. Okay.
wow.
Yeah.
But and
So
just when was the last one you had? What was your last book, like 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was actually more than that. It was yeah, it was quite it was I think it was 2018.
Before you go, Marlike, I just want to say that John is near and dear to my heart because I hosted this series in the San Francisco Bay Area called the Valona Deli Poetry Series. And
Mhm.
we had known of each other just for various poetry reasons. And so he came out and he read at my series at Valona, and it's this tiny little town called Crockett. But it was a wonderful reading. I'll always remember it. And so we
it's
go back.
awesome.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm
my
not surprised you two have
yeah, it's my
connected
pleasure to
down
be here. I love
together.
John Newman for a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
love
think
that series. Yeah, when Valona closed, I was sad about it. Yeah, that was a phenomenal series.
But we go back a
Yeah.
long way. I appreciate you, John.
Yeah, appreciate you too.
And I think that's one of the things that, if you haven't met John, I mean, certainly you're blown away by the poems tonight, but also I think, Connie, you just really hit one of the things I deeply appreciate is the community building and the support of other poets and the making space for other poets' works through Pedestal. It's hard work to keep doing that. And
Pedestal is one of the best. It's very recognized. It has a huge reputation. And
yeah.
support others and do your own work. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But I did want to cycle back to something that Regina just put in here because I think sometimes it might be easy to get caught up in the images that John has created in the poems and not hear the music. And Regina, I'm not surprised that, with your well-tuned ear, that was something that really stood out. But what
Cool.
she wrote, John, was the music of your poetry is magical. And I think um if you listen back to this recording, just for the musicality of the work, you'll be blown away
Mm.
by that alone. And there's certain ones that it to me is almost more dirgy or ominous in the rhythm and the language, and that just adds to it. And that's master craftsmanship. I did
Mm.
think of what's so funny is like you have very exact details, and yet so much of what I find myself feeling is like it's like a dreamlike quality or a sense of I'm not sure what is real. And there's that synesthesia. And I love it
Mm.
because there's
Mhm.
exact moments that were pinned like a bug, to the reality. And then there's others where we're loosened and it's a floating feeling. And is that something that you crafted, or do you think it's just something that, elementally arises from your writing practice or you as a poet?
Such a good question, and such a good your phrasing was so right on. I felt yeah, I guess in some way I've always been interested in that blend of how do you work with specific elements and at the same time create kind of an expansive, or like you say, a dream like
Mm,
context. So it's I guess sort of trying to work with those paradoxes, um even with like when there's narrative, like how do you have narrative but at the same time um have energy that pulls away from the narrative, so it's yeah, just trying to work with those kind of those balances, I think is really has always interested me.
that's fine. It definitely works because I think to give a reader the experience that you were hoping for is I think that's amazing. That's one of the gifts of poetry is that
Mhm.
communication outward
Yeah. Yeah.
and that connection. I did want to go back also, if people wanted a signed copy, John, is there a way that they could reach out to you to get a copy?
Oh yeah. I'll
Okay.
I'm gonna put this in the chat here. So I'll
Thank
put
you. That would be
two,
helpful.
yeah, I've got two links in there. The top one, if you go through the first one, which let me send it. There we go. If you go through the first one, I can sign the book and and uh and send it to you. So feel free to do that if you'd like.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any specific questions? Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, John, I'm a Midwesterner from Iowa and Minnesota. I live in Southern California, and those accents are less interesting to me than I'm hearing a lot of Southern accents here. And my
Yeah.
question is, growing up in the South, uh, did the rhythms of aunts and uncles and grandparents and preachers uh, affect you as a kid, a speaker, and then an adult poet?
Mm. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I think so, for sure. I mean, yeah, there's something about the South. Actually, I was raised by um Europeans, so they although she had a lot of affinity with the Southern uh you know, that whole culture, I guess you could say. And but I think so. Yeah, I think there is something about it that that had an impact, and yeah, the voices, I don't know, that sort of mix of like beauty and horror in a way. I don't know, it's a such a charged place. That South is kind of a, like I say, there's some really something amazing about it. There's a kind of natural, I always say, voluptuousness in the South, but at the same
Mhm.
time there's just, there's also a lot of ghosts, and
Definitely.
so working with all that. And I think one thing I love, I will say this too, I didn't read a lot of poems that do this, but one thing I love in the South is the names they have for things, like naming. Like there's a lot of like very odd names for things, and my grandmother loved that. So I grew up in a family where making up names was kind of encouraged. So I do use a lot of that of those kind of that odd vernacular in some of these poems. And then there are even a few where I coin kind of terms for things. I think that's kind of a fun kind of lineage.
But it comes out as part of the music that Regina was referring to. I think it makes it musical.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you.
for that question, Bill.
Yeah,
I
that's a good
also wanted
question.
to go back to, this is not the first cover that Thea has, that you have created for John. And I did want to talk about that. Did the photograph, how did it come about? I mean, did you, Thea, have this photograph already? And I think I've already talked about this before with you, John, but how do y'all collaborate with something like that? Just to bring up the photograph again.
John gives me an incredible amount of leeway, which I really appreciate. As an artist, he really trusts me to just read some of the work. He never let me read the whole manuscript. He only let me read parts of it, pieces of it. But I knew Richard and I knew the story, and so that was enough. The photo is from a retreat that we were on, a
Mhm.
meditation retreat that we were on, and we were in this old cabin that just looked and felt so haunted. And that was the afternoon sun. It was so cool in the cabin and so bright outside. And we agreed that that would be a really powerful image for this particular book. So I was glad that we agreed quickly to work with that image.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love the backstory. Thank you for that, Thea.
Yeah.
and it is a perfect image. The long hallway is, kind of a recurring thing, and the way light and dark hit each other. And, that photograph is kind of haunting, but also there's a desire to move down that hallway to the light. And so, I mean, it works on so many different levels. It really
Yeah.
does.
Well, Thea, you really got the angle on that too, and just the way you kind of place the text. I mean, it's a very,
Mhm.
well, the word that comes to mind is elegant, it's a very elegant design on your part, I feel.
I think that torn edge, thank you for that, makes me think of a life interrupted. Just the
Mhm. Yeah. The torn edge is so important, I think, to that whole image. So
Yeah.
somehow, yeah, I feel really blessed that I've been able to work with John on so many books. We do collaborate well together, so that's
that's awesome.
it's fun. Yeah.
Thank you for that backstory, because I really I did want to hear y'all talk about like how you work that, and it was interesting to hear. Does anybody else have any questions for John or comments? Or did we throw it all in the chat section? Man, that was a busy chat section. You could be reading a novella.
Yeah, I look forward to reading those. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'll just send it all to you in one lump sum. All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, if we are ready to move for open mic, that sounds perfect. John, thank you so much again. It was really lovely to see
Yeah,
y'all.
thank you.
And I'm
Thanks,
excited for
everybody.
your beach
Yeah,
trip.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Monica, I have to step off. Sorry, I have grandparent commitments, but I wanted to hear John read and see all of you. So
It
congrats.
was so
Connie.
good to see you, Connie. Love you.
I'll
Grandbabies. I have Christy first, and Christy, you had asked me to pause, so give me one moment.
God music in minor. There is something about singing God music in a minor key. Lets God and the world know that you or your people been through something. Like the trauma is still sitting in your bones, like the tire is still in your flesh, like you just heard that one of your people got sentenced to life for doing something to keep from killing himself, like the world sees you like mud, like beast, like interloper, like abomination, like God not breathed in, like Gollum clay. God, ear tuned to the minor key, knows that while we are wrapped, trapped in flesh, the universal nothing is something, that time winks our eons, that colors and shades are more than God displaying diverse palettes. Cultures and land masses have been built like armor to explain and defend the difference. Human voices modulate to emphasize humanity, sometimes like low moans, sometimes like creamy croons, sometimes like desperately high screams, always reaching for God in minor key. Listen, can you hear minor notes winding staircases to heaven, carrying prayers, trying to find God like us, souls trembling for release? Selah, Selah.
Yes. Regina. I love that. I'm so glad you got inspired to read that poem. This is a good one for tonight. And the people that haven't been here for open mic, I probably should have warned you, our open mics are fire. Just straight up fire. Then I'm coming to you. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you, John. That was amazing. I loved the poetry. If I could just do a brief commercial. Malika and Regina are going to be reading for Bright Hill for Word Thursdays on Thursday, September 26th, and several of the other people who are part of your group are going to be doing open mic to support them. So please come. It's going to be amazing. So, end of commercial. My poem is called Pink Veil, and it's an ekphrastic poem based on a portrait of a man who is painting a woman who's in a gown and veil. He is only there to paint an idolized woman. The rustling of the fabric distracts him. He's trying to decide how to paint the veil, how best to show transparency, the folds, the drape, and the texture. She's enveloped in a delicate cocoon of pink meringue fabric. Her presence a soft whisper in the room. Her skin, flawless. Her body, young. Playing with her hair, patting the chignon. Suddenly shy, she turns away. She is there as a mannequin, well muscled from her job as a serving girl. Bored, she plays with the veil and shifts the fabric, causing constant disruption. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Oh, and gosh, I should have turned it over. Am I still, oh, I'm unmuted now. My computer was saying I was still muted. I could have turned it over so we could also see the image too, but that was powerful. A soft whisper in the room. Make sure you read the comments, Lynn. Bill, I'm so glad that you are going to read too. I'm coming to you. Give me one moment. There you go.
Thanks, Malika. So John, what a pleasure to hear your work. And one of the reasons I came on today was to hear you and to say thank you for the coolest rejection letter I've ever gotten in my life, which said from Pedestal, we can't offer a home to many stellar pieces. For what it's worth, your submission was asterisked by at least one editor. And I wrote you guys back and said, that is the greatest encouragement that I've ever gotten. So this is a new poem written after that. It's called I'm Going to Write. I'm going to write stucco Spanish towers with royal glass orbs atop. I'm going to write asphalt plots in silk, tweed, tiny beards and smirks. I'm going to write every thought I've ever had. Spiral staircase, heavy carpet, dons, princesses, geeks, and monsters, children in matching frocks, their love-filled mistress traipsing up and down with toys between meals. I'm going to write a vegetable stand where Jesus works. I'm going to write moths and recluse spiders who move so fast. Why do I move so slow? I'm going to write in the shadows of veins on leaves, doodles in the margins, mythic trips to the bakery, spin the moon. Plots are the easy part. I'm going to write about gravestones and put death on the page. I'll celebrate with a simple wink of wine. I'm going to write in broad strokes and leather, like Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan of the Jungle, Norma Desmond primping for her close-up. I'm going to write in the night. Let darkness move me. Let clouds cut slow across the mountain. I'm going to write the mountain, how it got so wide, so fast, so green, so wet it slid over La Conchita town, as a man went out for groceries and came back to find the earth had swallowed his house. I'm going to write epitaphs for sense, for truth, for libraries, for happy-hearted humans. First, I'll make a cup of green tea. Then I'm going to write.
Thank you so much, Bill. I have to say, I really love how that refrain just gets more and more magical. It's a leaping off point. It really works for the way your mind thinks. Fabulous. So make sure you check the comment section, please.
Thank you.
Karen, my buddy, my co-host, I'm coming to you.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I hope you don't regret that. This is pretty big a slice of weirdness. This came after talking about poetry with Christy for a while, and then, I don't know, craziness ensued. This is a collage poem using words from every title in the main section of Rattle's summer issue in reverse order. So this is Dancing on the Table of Summer's Rattle with the unnecessary use of capital letters. And I do have unnecessary capitals in this, so I'm going to read them with an unnecessary emphasis so you can kind of get the gist here. So, Dancing on the Table of Summer's Rattle with the unnecessary use of capital letters. Place aging in a rusty bucket and leave it sit, set aside and being set in a puddle of waiting. Build a poem out of daffodils baptized in real time and place your bets at the dog track on any possibly true or at least half-truth story. Capitalize on the effect, the affect of the unnecessary use of the capitalization of nouns. The reception will keep you on hairpins and knitting needles, here where the fruit flies flirt with the yellow-bellied half-ass of a half-moon, half-lit. When I say thank you for ladies' blouses, know how much I hate an apostrophe hanging out above the end of a plural noun. It looks like unfinished business, like Eve's surely unheard protesting, moving me surely to cynicism, like everything falling to pieces with the state of it all determined by the things we forget on the way to the midway of our wayfaring. And might I add, this is not a question, just a warning that I am continuing on. If you got a flat top bigger than your ass and it's got legs, it's a table. And this is for Christy L. Williams, just because she laughs so hard sometimes she snorts. And I really like how unadulterated that can be. Most of the time, like dancing on the table of Summer's Rattle with the unnecessary use of capital letters.
I love it when you go crazy, girl. It's fabulous. I have to tell you, part of it seemed like a political commentary. To me, it made sense.
It probably was.
Yeah, love working in Christie's name. Yeah, no, it was fabulous, Lynn. That's wonderful. Shamala, I'm coming to you.
Yeah, I was going to read something short and serious, but after that, I have to be silly. So this is
Karen's crazy.
yeah, you're infectious, Karen. And thank God for that. Okay, this is a ridiculously long prose poem, like meant for the end of a chapbook or something. So I'm going to read just some random sections of it because this is a poem and it will sort of vaguely make sense. It's called A Tech Manual for Surviving and Thriving under South Asian Family Customs. Be prepared on being born to be rubbed all over with turmeric and various oils and to have your head shaved. Why anybody thinks baby and razor coming together is a good thing is not yours to ask. In fact, it's not yours to ask anything. Instead, words will be whispered in your ear to tell you how to think, but also sweet things will be put to your lips as soon can be. So there's that. Talking about words and hair, make a note as early as you can. There are two different words for hair, one high class and one low. No prizes for guessing which one will probably get stuck in your head or what your aunties will have to say about that. Note, please, the aunties' opinions are always right and their orders are to be obeyed without question. This goes from birth to death. Okay, skipping some. There is only one right kind of frankincense to burn in a funeral house, and it is sold at the last shop that whoever has the misfortune to be sent out for it tries. This is related to the second law of thermodynamics, which was probably designed by an Asian auntie. God is, of course, primarily responsible for the way the universe works, but we all know how much tech work is outsourced to Asia. Skipping again. But remember how good the food is and be content. Also remember, your family is so big, you will never get to the end of it. And for every unpleasant person, there is somebody amazing and on your wavelength, just waiting to be found. Of course, found diaspora. They may be anywhere on the planet, so good luck with the finding part of the program. Use your frequent flyer miles and your WhatsApp wisely. And may God, any God and every God, you'll need them, go with you.
Oh, I wish you're going to have to read that whole thing at some point because everybody needs to hear the whole thing in its completeness. Fabulous. Yeah. Starting with razors and babies, you had me. I have Cal, and then our final poet is Laura. Cal, coming to you. Make sure you unmute.
Thank you. All right. This is a short poem, one of the ones with a trope from astrophysics, and it was in Visions International magazine before I acquired that magazine and became editor. And it's called Dark. I read the universe consists mostly of smoky stuff we can't see, maybe can't understand. Our brains not evolved enough to ever understand. I should have known this after all that time spent looking into your eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Cal, you caught me off guard with that. I'm really straight to the point. That's awesome. Really like it. No. Laura, I have you as our final poet. And I want to thank everybody who has been here creating community and also for reading in the open mic fire edition. I got you now.
Okay. This is called Only Part of This Poem is True. Divorced your forever best friend and burn all the books he left behind. The weighty history tomes, crumbling sci-fi paperbacks. Fuck Philip K. Dick and his replicants. March off in warm boots to a quiet cabin. Read a serious novel. Remember then how your brother decapitated your Barbies, his G.I. Joe swinging vacuous-eyed blondes by their hair, victorious. The nuns only had him for 2 years, but forged him with sharp slaps of ruler on palm for squirming in his chair. They shamed my sister, placed her in a corner for being late, when it was all Claire McNally's fault. Come full circle back to yourself, to the small room, a white-walled cell, but no bloody cross over the bed. Thank you.
Ah, lovely. Come full circle. I've been there. I had a friend that used to say, when it comes to vicious circles, I know my way around.
That's good.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was fabulous. All right, guys, I just want to take a moment to give thanks for open mic and for John Amen and Thea being here and all of y'all. And Cynthia, so good to see you. And Bill, welcome to our group. I hope you'll come another time. And Lynn, always good to see you. Thanks for the reminder. I'm looking forward to the reading. I'm taking a Thursday off.
Thank you
To
all
go
for letting
play.
me eavesdrop. I
Thanks
very
so much.
enjoyed it.
It's great
Thank
being
y'all.
on here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Y'all
Thank
be
you,
well.
John.
Have fun at Holden Beach.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Great to
much.
see you,
Thank
Malika.
you.
Great to see you too, guys. Have a great week. I'll see you next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.